For decades, I Love Lucy was remembered as sheer happiness, tinted lights, nonstop laughter, and a cast that was like family. It was the sort of program that seemed to transcend its time, reaching across the years to become a cultural landmark, a reminder of when comedy was innocent, reassuring, and universal. To the millions who watched it, it was a TV utopia, the pinnacle of mid-century bliss. But, as is the way with all master illusions, there was much more going on beneath the surface than anyone knew. Before she died, Vivian Vance, the star who played Ethel Mertz, told something that shattered that perfect image. She had kept the secret for years, behind the laughter, the rehearsals, and the applause. Her admission wasn't merely shocking, it was disturbing, enough to have viewers re-examining what they believed about the show. The question was why she'd kept it inside for so long, and just what she finally confessed about one of television's greatest shows. Vivian Vance was beloved by millions as Ethel Mertz, the sharp-tongued next-door neighbor, whose repartee with Lucy Ricardo was comedic gold. Audiences perceived her to be warm, loyal, and always funny, the ideal foil to Lucille Ball's zany genius. Her timing, her faces, and her capacity for meeting Lucy's comedic match made her indispensable. On camera, she played a character who appeared to be in harmony with the antics of Lucy, the sort of neighbor everyone wanted to have. But behind the scenes, Vivian bore a personal secret that undercut all the show seemed to stand for. Vivian died on August 17, 1979, when Hollywood lost one of its most shining comedic stars at age 70. Years of fighting breast cancer, the disease spread and weakened her, but she remained best known for her indomitable spirit. She spent her last months quietly in California with her husband, John Dodds, who remained loyal to the end. Tributes flooded in from the entertainment community worldwide. Desi Arnaz said she was not only a talented actress, but also a close friend. Lucille Ball cried as she recalled the woman who had been a constant presence through success and sadness. Vivian's death closed an era, but in departing the stage of life, she left us with truths that forever altered the way fans remembered I Love Lucy. By the time she started revealing these secrets, Vivian was already waging her toughest fight. Diagnosed with breast cancer in 1973, she survived decades of operations, chemotherapy, and treatments that broke down her body but never broke her spirit. Those around her realized that she lived with the awareness her days were numbered, and maybe that necessity allowed her the strength to speak her mind. As the years took their toll on her health, she looked back on her life, her fights, and the legacy that had shaped her existence. What she shared was that the behind-the-scenes truth was quite far from the laughter her fans loved. For years, fans felt the cast was as close in real life as they were in front of the camera. They pictured a set of love and camaraderie. However, says Vivian, the unity was TV-created pretense. Behind the cameras, tension, not to mention suffocating studio regulations, governed the air, while the relationships were more complicated than anyone could imagine. One of Vivian's greatest burdens was playing Ethel Mertz. Initially, being cast on such a pioneering sitcom was exhilarating. Being on a nationally loved program offered fame, security, and attention. However, as the years passed, the role became a confinement. She admitted that she felt imprisoned many times, held back by a character who gained her fame, but at the same time restricted her possibilities. It was a paradox. Ethel gave her everything and took everything from her simultaneously. Her candor in her observations in those last years provided glimpses to fans of the price of comedy. The sacrifices beneath the laughter were enormous, and Vivian conceded the cost was greater than she had anticipated. The most surprising revelation she made derived from her on-screen wedded bliss to Fred Mertz. Ethel and Fred's on-screen partnership became one of television's favorite comedy duos, but it was poisoned from the very beginning behind the scenes. William Frawley, the actor who was cast as Fred, was well over 20 years older than Vivian. At the time, Vivian was attractive, energetic, and in her early 40s, while Frawley was nearing his 60s with a reputation for heavy drinking and a gruff demeanor shaped by decades in Hollywood. The pairing seemed unnatural, and Vivian, in a candid moment, remarked that audiences would never believe a woman like her would marry a man that much older. That one remark ignited the flame of a feud that never diminished. Frawley construed her words as a personal affront, and his pride would not permit it. After that, their professional working relationship turned sour. While they performed faultless comedies as the sparring Mertzes, off-camera, their contempt was genuine. Their snappy repartees were not always scripted. Oftentimes, the bite in their comments was driven by real annoyance. The crew and cast became accustomed to the tension, but the hostility never disappeared. Vivian went on to confess unabashedly, "Bill and I never got along. From the very beginning, we simply couldn't stand each other. But we were actors and we did our jobs. The amusing thing is, people thought our arguing was love. It wasn't. It was the sole, genuine element of Fred and Ethel. Their on-again, off-again feud became the stuff of legend, recalled by people who worked on the show as a never-ending rivalry that grew no softer with age. Ironically, that bitterness perhaps fueled their chemistry. The truth of their bickering came from a foundation of genuine annoyance, making their comedic timing all the more biting. To fans, it was laughable. To Vivian, it was draining. As tough as her run-ins with Frawley were, they were child's play compared to the stress of working with Lucille Ball. Vivian's entry into Lucy's universe was both thrilling and frightening. Lucille was a perfectionist who practiced scenes over and over again until timing was tack-sharp. Vivian remembered how Lucy's genius made her feel in the shade, confessing to being terrified during early days. But gradually, the intimidation became admiration. Lucy's tireless work ethic educated Vivian in how to sharpen her skills, how to balance precision with instinct. She challenged me, frustrated me, and inspired me all at once. Vivian admitted, though not always easy between them, their relationship evolved into something much more profound than professional regard. Lucille and Vivian became close friends. It was Vivian who remained by Lucy's side when her marriage to Desi Arnaz began to collapse, providing comfort and not judgment. Lucille would later confess that Vivian was her rock, the one she could turn to when the world around her was falling apart. Their relationship transformed into a sisterhood, one that would survive an entire lifetime based on laughter, tears, and loyalty. To Vivian, Lucy was the sister I never had. To Lucy, Vivian was family. Even this friendship, however, was not enough to protect Vivian from the brutal demands of Hollywood. The studio demands were vicious, and many of them were directed against her personally. To highlight Lucy's glamour, Desilu executives demanded that Vivian remain a bit heavier. She was simply told that she had to appear less beautiful so Lucy would look more beautiful. For a woman who adored style and beauty, it was degrading. They asked me to look dowdy, she confessed resentfully. The studio controlled everything, her weight, her clothes, her makeup. She was made to wear sloppy dresses, unbecoming wigs, and powder that made her look older than she did. What people saw as Ethel's character was, in fact, a strictly enforced disguise. Off-camera, Vivian was glamorous, chic, and elegant. Friends envied her glamour, her poise, her sense of style. And every day she had to don costumes that erased that persona. The dichotomy took its toll. It wasn't me up there, she said. It was someone the studio manufactured, and I had to live with her, whether I wanted to or not. Even with the humiliation, she played by the book. To challenge the studio was to risk her career, and in the 1950s, a career's success relied heavily upon its image. The process of live performance simply added to the stress. Rehearsals ran late at night, every step and line repeated until flawless. Friday evenings were live in front of a crowd of hundreds, mistakes not acceptable. Vivian likened it to existing within a pressure cooker. The laughter of the audience could take her to heaven, but silence was a knife. She took the memories of that laughter back home. Every evening, her limbs sore from falls, her throat parched from projection. But for all the fatigue, she never disputed the enchantment. It was frightening, it was thrilling, and it was the most difficult work of my life, she told herself. In the background, Vivian's professional life was no less volatile than her personal life. She was married 4 times, with each marriage a manifestation of her quest for stability. Her first 2 marriages were unsuccessful as she chased ambition and theater, and ultimately Hollywood. The third marriage to Philip Ober was marred by jealousy and reported abuse, causing scars which took years to heal. But in John Dodds, her last husband, she had the tranquility she had been seeking all her life. Dodds loved her not for her celebrity, but for herself. They created a private, caring existence together. And he stayed with her until her last breath. As cancer ravaged her body, Vivian remained defiant. She thought not only of how hard it was, but of how grateful she had been to perform, to make people laugh, to have friends. Most of all, her Emmy was given to the Albuquerque Little Theater, where her career had started decades before. It was a gesture of going back to her roots, a reminder that prior to Hollywood, she was just any other woman with a dream of making people experience something through acting. The story of Vivian Vance is not one of comedy, nor fame, nor even her quarrel with William Frawley. It is about the secret price of making millions happy, the sacrifices behind the televisual illusion of perfection, and the strength of a woman who gave her life to a craft that often demanded more from her than it ever gave in return. She bore her truths in silence for years, disclosing them only when she knew she had little time left. Doing so provided the public with an opportunity to glimpse beyond the spotlights and smiles into the truth of what it was to be Ethel Mertz, and even more significantly, what it was to be Vivian Vance. Her legacy makes us wonder, what is the real price of fame, and is it ever truly worth the sacrifices made? Vivian's tale reminds us that behind each laugh track is a flesh-and-blood human, with fears, struggles, and hopes too often obscured from view. She may have been trapped by Ethel, but she was never invisible. In her confessions, she made sure that the world would finally behold the woman behind the apron, the actress behind the persona, and the truth behind the facade of bliss.